Hello, my name is Adam Stackhouse. I'm one of the producers of the Ampersand Festival, coming to you from the Kimball Theater, where if you're in town, you should come see some programming, come say hello. We're here till Sunday. But right now, the focus is on a very special guest that we're excited to have present to you all. Welcome to Breaking into Film, Key Takeaways from My Journey with alum Omar Kamara, class of 15. Omar is going to take over a second and talk to you, but for a quick heads up, his short film Mass Ave won the grand prize at the Directors Guild of America Student Film Awards. He was a finalist in HBO short film competition at ABFF and was nominated for the Grand Prix at Claremont-Ferrand International Film Festival. The film was licensed by HBO, and you can watch it right now or after this workshop on HBO Max if you haven't already. In addition to winning the Silver Screen at the Cannes Lion Young Director Award and the Franklin J. Schaffner Fellow Award at AFI, Kamara's films have played at numerous Oscar-qualifying film festivals, including Rhode Island, Holly Shorts, and the Pan-African Film Festival. He recently completed production on his debut film, African Giants, targeting a festival release this year. Hope to play it here at this festival next year, Omar. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. That sounds good.
And his films touch on his first generation experiences and strive to highlight and honor the African diaspora. We're really excited to have Omar today, with your background and with your experience and your stories. And I'm just going to let you take it away. Thanks for being here, Omar.
Thanks so much, Adam. Really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm very, very honored to be talking with you guys. I also was like not sure. I was like, how many people are going to be here? Who wants to listen to Omar Kamara talk about films? And the fact that there's like 37 people here is it's very humbling to me, very exciting, and hopefully we can get into it. So what I was thinking to just start, I mean, that was a fantastic introduction. I was going to start with a little bit of my background, but I wanted to kind of just go through the story of, my time from William & Mary to now being in LA, working as a writer director, for the first like about 40 minutes or so, and then open it up to questions if anyone has questions, to try to be more targeted and more helpful to you guys at the end of the session. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a little slideshow thing. Okay, great. So yeah, so I was born in Virginia, so I was raised in Woodbridge. My parents are both from Sierra Leone in West Africa, and so in all of my films, that's like a big part of my storytelling about my first generation experience being stuck between these two cultures and trying to figure out what it means to be American and what it means to be African. And a lot of that actually happened, especially with my time at William & Mary. So when I got into William & Mary, my parents, like, I don't know how many of you guys know like about African parents and like the feelings they have about their children, but I was supposed to be a doctor. So my older sister is a doctor. She's a surgeon. She's finishing residency. I was next up. That's what I was supposed to do. So when I came into William & Mary, I was actually a neuroscience major. So that's what I was studying in my first couple of years at William & Mary, which was neuroscience. And I did that for my freshman year, and I immediately was like, this is just not for me. Like I think I took organic chemistry and a couple other classes, which are great. And anyone who's taking those, kudos to you guys, because it's very, very difficult stuff. My grades were definitely less than stellar. But it wasn't me. It wasn't who I am. And so I eventually came home and I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to switch careers. And he said, that seems responsible. That seems reasonable. So I actually switched to economics. So my degree is actually in economics, not film related at all. And the reason I think that's interesting is I actually came into William & Mary not knowing that I was going to be a director, not knowing I was going to make films. I just was like, trying to make my dad happy, and then switch to try to make me happy. So I was an econ major for a long time. So basically, what I'll do is I'll start with Williamsburg, and then we'll go all the way to Los Angeles. So I get to Williamsburg, and here are some embarrassing photos of me back at college. And so the big thing that was a part of my identity was the African Cultural Society. So that, like I said, I was growing up and my parents were from Sierra Leone. I, wasn't always around other Africans. And what I thought was amazing about the African Cultural Society, which was in Pleasant Hall, I still remember I actually lived in the A House. I was the president of it for a couple of years, was I just found so many people from similar backgrounds as me. So I didn't feel alone. So I do have to give William & Mary that credit, where you can see like, I have family members, that people still actually who are part of my film journey that I met through this club. You can see that's me at the Sunken Gardens. Like, so it was definitely a big part of who I was, but still all before I knew I wanted to do filmmaking. And so actually, my girlfriend at William & Mary, that's Aaliyah Wooten. She's class of 2018. So I met her at William & Mary. She lives here now in LA with me. So I owe a lot to William & Mary is why I bring this up. But actually, what really sparked everything was my sophomore year. A friend of mine named Alpha Berry, who also went to William & Mary, showed me a film called Blue Valentine, which I don't know if you guys have seen Blue Valentine. It's by Derek Cianfrance. It's, to me, one of the most amazing films I've ever seen. And at the time, I was very like, I think I was doing this kind of like a machismo thing where I was like, I'm this tough guy. I don't really show emotions. And I was a sophomore year in the A house, and I watched Blue Valentine, and I started sobbing, like just in my dorm room, tears coming from my eyes, sobbing at the realness of what they showed on screen. And when I watched that film, like, not to be cliche, but like something happened to me where I was like, I really don't care what happens for the rest of my life. Like, all I want to do is figure out a way to make this. Like, if I can figure out a way to make this type of film, but about people who look like me and things that I care about, then like my life is going to be golden. Like, that's all I want to do. So I saw that, and then I watched another film called Shame by Steve McQueen right after. Steve McQueen, the filmmaker of 12 Years a Slave, Widows, incredible film. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do this. So I was really, really focused on it, but I still wasn't certain that it was possible. So I actually did, I did the 24-hour festival, which I think you guys did yesterday. So I did that. That was my first time making films, and it was really, really fun. The film is terrible. I hope you can never find it. It's not good at all, but it was really, really fun to do, and that kind of gave me my first itch of like, okay, this is like really, really awesome. So I don't know about you guys, and I mean, hopefully we can open up the Q&A and talk about it a little bit. But I didn't really know, in growing up in Woodbridge, like I don't really know anyone. I didn't know anyone who was like a filmmaker and wanted to be a filmmaker. Like, I didn't know that was like a real thing that you could do, a real job. Like, I knew these filmmakers, but they seemed to just be, Steven Spielberg was just from some foreign planet. They're from different places. So I didn't really think it was a real thing. So I was like, you know what I'll do? I'm going to work first, save a bunch of money so that I have something to fall back on, and then I'll go into film when I'm like rich. That was my big plan. Not the smartest plan, but that was the plan that I had. So I actually got hired by William & Mary after I graduated. So I finished school, and then I worked for William & Mary at the Alumni Center for the alumni as an alumni engagement coordinator. And as you can see, I mean, look at the smiles. This was one of the best times of my life. It was fantastic. And I was the Northeast coordinator. So I used to travel a lot to, it was Boston, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, and network with people and basically get alumni excited about William & Mary. And the coolest thing for me was like, this is my first adult job. So like, I had money, 401k. Like, I was like, this is kind of cool. So I was doing that for a year after graduation. And this is, I think, where the itch really changed for me. So before, like I said, guys, I was kind of intimidated. I didn't think you could really do this. So I kind of was like, I'll do it later down the line. And as I was doing this job with these wonderful people, I realized that I just didn't think it was going to be enough. I didn't think it was going to be fulfilling enough. I didn't think I was going to be happy doing this and waiting. And so I was like, I have to leave, which was a really hard decision for me because I was having a really good time there. And also, I hadn't told my dad that I wanted to be a filmmaker yet. So I remember I drove back home, and in typical West African culture, I was like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be respectful, I'm going to ask my dad. And I said, Dad, I know what I want to do. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to make movies. And I'll never forget what he said. He looked at me and he said, if there's one thing you need to know about me, it's that I have a very strong will. And if I never have to talk to you again, I'll never talk to you again. And he got up, walked out of the room, and I didn't speak a word to him for like 6 months after that, because I was already living by myself. So I kind of packed my stuff up, moved out, and I already moved out, but I packed my stuff up, went back home. And for some reason, although that was like one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life, it's actually a little bit is In Mass Ave, my film that's on HBO. It actually was very galvanizing for me, because I was like, if my dad never talks to me again and I'm still alive, I'm still fine, then maybe I can become a filmmaker. Maybe I can deal with this crazy thing that I don't know if it's possible or not. And so I actually came back, and I told everyone at my job that I wanted to leave. They were very supportive. So I actually quit my job, and then I moved to Richmond, Virginia. And that's why I think my first takeaway is just about making the leap. And the reason I talk about this is because on my festival circuit, I've met a lot of young filmmakers, a lot of people who are up and coming, a lot of people who want to become a filmmaker. And a lot of the times what I found is that they were saying, I want to become a filmmaker. I'm going to be a filmmaker. I'm an aspiring filmmaker, things like that. And everyone who actually is a filmmaker, everyone that I know in the industry now, because now I have, way more industry contacts that I had before, a lot of friends who are filmmakers, are all people that at one point they just made the leap. So here I was working this job. Like I said, it was great. I had the 401k. It was fantastic. Life was good, but I knew it wasn't going to make me happy. So I quit and I made the leap. And I actually went what some people would deem as going backwards. I moved to Richmond and I worked at Sprint part-time. And the reason I worked at Sprint is because I could only work 3 days a week, but it was commission based and I kind of was good at selling. So I used to sell to work those 3 days a week, work open to close 3 days a week. And I would have about 4 days off, or excuse me, 4 days I would work and have 3 days off. And I would just use that time to make films. So I made that leap. I went to Richmond, Virginia. And this was like a big step of my journey because it was like the trenches, right? So I'm all passion, I'm all excitement. And I was like, I'm a big Kobe guy. So I was reading a bunch of Kobe quotes, listening to how you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like I was doing all that stuff. And I just started making films. And so I bought this little camera, this little DSLR, and literally I just started shooting all kinds of things. So the first things I did was like wedding videography. So I started to teach myself how to make these films. And so I would do wedding videography, I would do music videos for people, all different types of things. And I knew nothing about film when I switched. So I bought a DSLR at the time. DSLR filmmaking was all the rave. I mean, now everyone's doing mirrorless, but at that time it was DSLR filmmaking. And so I just started to teach myself, buy different lenses, buy primes, all this kind of stuff. And that brings me to the other point, which is like, so after you make the leap, the key is, I think, also just being the thing. And what I mean is, when I bought that camera, I was a director. Like no one was telling me, like no one was gonna tell me otherwise. I had already convinced myself I'm a director. All I do is make movies, and I started to build that muscle. So I actually shot a bunch of different things. So these are just 3 old posters. So I made a show called Educated. This also you cannot find. It has been destroyed. You will not find it online, but it was the first web series I ever did. And I actually was modeling myself after Issa Rae at the time. So I was like, I didn't want to go to film school. I was going to be completely self-taught, make my own things. And Issa Rae did The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, which then HBO picked up and it became Insecure. So I was thinking I was going to do Educated, and I actually did it with Jordan Taylor, who is another alum. You may have seen him in my photos earlier, but I did it with Jordan Taylor, and we wrote it together and we shot it together. We didn't know what we were doing. We even shot some things at William and Mary, which was phenomenal. And then I also shot this music video with Charles Diamond, who's Rick Lampkins. He also went to William and Mary's an alum there, but he was a rapper. And so I shot that music video for him. And the first short film I shot was, again, up top. And that's actually with Rick Lampkins, whose legs are there. And then my little brother, who also went to William and Mary. And that was the first short film that I ever shot. And so the hard part about all this stuff is like, I'm learning on the fly. So, at this point, I'm the director, writer, producer. I'm doing crafty. I'm making the snacks. I'm doing production design. I'm doing everything just to try to make this thing happen. And because of that, as you can imagine, the stuff is lower budget because I'm not trained in all those things. But it was exciting because I was learning and I was doing it. And I didn't really even care that it wasn't going as successfully because I just was excited to keep doing it. But basically, after about a year or so like a year and a half of doing that, I started to realize that I was like nowhere near where I wanted to be. Like I was like, why does my stuff like not look like Paul Thomas Anderson? Like, why does this not look like Tarantino? Like, what's happening? Like, why is it all low budget? And at this time, I was adamantly against going back to school. I think I was kind of burnt out from undergrad, mainly because I was studying something I wasn't interested in. And so I did not want to go back to school at all. Like, I just thought it was the worst thing. Like I was going to be, like I said, self-taught and do my own thing. And so when this happened, it was time for me to make a decision. Like I can keep making these low budget things that I thought weren't good enough, or I can try to find a crew of like-minded people who can help me be better. And the real thing I was looking for, to be honest, was a cinematographer. I was like my shots they're just not what I want them to. So the real thing I was looking for was a cinematographer. So that's the next key takeaway is don't be afraid to adapt and to be flexible. So like I said, I really didn't want to go back to school. I had no interest in going back to school, but I realized like I just need help. And the best place to do that is going to a film school with a bunch of talented people. And so I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm going to apply to film school. Again, I had no backing. Like, you know, I didn't know who, like, you know, where, like, one of the best film schools. Like I knew USC, I knew NYU, Spike Lee, you know, I knew that stuff, but I didn't know anything. So I literally Googled like top film schools, found the top 8 film schools and applied to all of them blind. Like I was like, I knew a little bit about them, but I applied to all of them blind. And what was interesting was at the time, a lot of people were telling me like, you're not going to get into film school. Like you make little crappy videos with your DSLR, like in your backyard. Like it's not going to be like if you're looking for these top film schools in the world, you're not going to get in. But I like I'm saying, guys, I had this insane like belief of like, oh, you know, it's funny looking at my old stuff now, but I was like, I'm going to get into film school. And I was like, I'm going to get into one of the top film schools in the world. I just believed it, you know, believed in myself and believed it. So I applied. And I think the big thing for me is when I applied, I think it was the first time that I told the truth on an application. Like I think before that, everything I applied, you know, was for the medicine part. So like I always was like, I think lying, I think pretending to be something. But this time I literally wrote the truth. And I remember that I wrote in my essay to AFI, where I eventually went to film school, I wrote like, my biggest fear, I wrote, I'm very ambitious. I have a lot of goals and things I want to do. But my biggest fear is that you guys will think that I'm not good enough. My biggest fear is that my background will not have anything to do with filmmaking. My biggest fear is that you'll look over me. And I just told the truth. And turns out when I got the interview, that was one of the things they resonated with the most, was like how honest I was about my film, about how I wanted to be a filmmaker, but like didn't know that much about filmmaking. And so I applied. And actually right at that time, I got a job at Homeland. So Showtime Homeland was actually shooting in Richmond. So I had called the Virginia Film Office and asked them, like, can you guys hook me up with anyone? And eventually, okay, this is actually kind of a crazy story. So I called the Virginia Film Office. They didn't respond to me. Then literally one day I'm working at Sprint. This is a true story. I'm working at Sprint, I'm selling phones, and this woman comes in and she's like, can you help me sell phones? I'm like, buy a new phone. I'm like, sure. I sell her a new phone, and we always used to have to transfer details, you know, in people's old contacts to new contacts. So as I go to transfer her details, literally as I'm hooking her phone up, an email comes across her phone and it says, blah, 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 Virginia Film Office. And it was the woman that I had been emailing that I never heard back from. This is a true story. And so I was like, oh my God, should I say something? And I'm like, no, that'll be weird. I'm not going to say anything. And I was like, should I say something? So I literally was like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to bother you. I don't mean to like snoop or anything, but I just saw an email come like, do you work for Virginia Film Office? And she was like, yeah. It literally was the woman I had emailed. And she was like, I'm so sorry that I had to reach out to you. I actually just got a new job and I'm going to be working for Homeland. Showtime is shooting. I'm going to be working for them, but send me your resume. And if we're looking for stuff, I'll reach out to you. So a month later, she reached out to me and I showed up and I was so excited, guys. I remember I came to set and I was a locations PA, which I don't know if you know what that is, but like, it's not a fun job. Like I used to take out trash, put heaters up, like all like the grunt work of set. I thought it was amazing. I was there the first day throwing things away. Like I thought it was amazing. And I remember at the end of the day, I went to my boss and I was like, thank you, this is so awesome. And he was like, okay, go to the office and get your paycheck. And I turned to him and was like, this is paid? Like I was so excited to do it that I thought I was volunteering. Like I thought it was the dream. It was the coolest thing. So yeah, I started working that job and I was working that job. And one day while I was on set, I got an email for an interview from the American Film Institute. It's funny now because at that time, I didn't know the American Film Institute was the #1 film school in the world. And at that time, we were number 4, I think. We're #1 again. And yes, I do have AFI pride, but we're #1 again. And I literally was like, let me look up this school that I know nothing about. And I looked it up and then I saw like it used to be #1. I saw Darren Aronofsky went there and I was like, oh, wait, this is actually like a great school. I should go there. And so they had an interview in person. So me and my dad had made up. So luckily, remember, he was very tough on me before, but we had made up when he saw that I was actually doing this. So I was broke because the PA job didn't pay as much as my other job. So I wasn't doing that well. And my dad flew me, he bought me a ticket and flew me to California. So it was my first time on the West Coast. I'd never been to the West Coast. And so I got to the West Coast my first time. and I had the interview, and it felt like home. Like I felt like the person saw me, knew what I wanted to do, knew who I was, and it felt like home. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So I did that interview first, and I was like, I'm coming here. Like, and they didn't even tell me I got in. I was like, I'm coming here. So I had an interview with Columbia after. I showed up late to my Columbia interview. My girlfriend was freaking out. She's like, what are you doing? My dad was like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, I'm telling you, like, I know in my heart, like, I'm supposed to come to AFI. So I didn't even really take the rest of the process seriously. I would not recommend that, but I'm just telling you the truth. I didn't take the rest of the process seriously. But that brings us to the takeaway I was saying was, I didn't want to go to film school, but then because everything wasn't going the way I wanted to, yes, I still had a plan. Yes, I still knew what I was looking for, but I had to adapt. I had to not be afraid to adapt and to change. And so I adapted and I got to film school, and that brought me to Los Angeles, California. And film school was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. This is me and my roommates at the time. This was our corny. We were like, let's do like a little back to school photo. So that's our corny back to school photo. And that's a picture that I took on campus at AFI the first day. And this place, like, I know some people, and maybe I don't know, we can talk about it more in the question section, but I know some people don't necessarily want to go back to film school and think film school is a waste of money. I personally am a huge advocate of film school. Film school absolutely changed my life. Not only the people that I met, so my key collaborators, people who made my feature, the people who made my short, my best friends in Los Angeles, I all met at film school. And at film school, I changed as a person and as a filmmaker. Like, it was that intensive. And what I love about AFI is it's conservatory based. And so what that means is it's not about like taking classes in academia and filling out things. It's actually about shooting films. So when you get there, you shoot films, you play the films in front of your classmates. They all tell you how terrible of a filmmaker you are. And then you go back and shoot another film and try to make it better. So like, that's literally how you do it. You have this thing called cycles and narrative workshop where you sit in front of everyone and they all tell you how terrible your film is. It's good. It builds a thick skin. But that at this place, that's when I realized how much I didn't know. Oh, sorry. And before that, I met Denzel at AFI. This is Denzel talking to me. Is one of my favorite memories. He came to speak, and I actually stood up and I told him how much like I had been using. He had this quote about, seeing yourself at, like, he was like, if it was easy, it wouldn't be Taraji P. Henson. If it was easy, it wouldn't be Viola Davis, all this stuff. Like, if it was easy, it wouldn't be all the people you want. So keep working and I'll see you at work. And that quote really stuck with me. And so I told that to him the day he was there. And so he literally, after I finished, puts his arms out and goes, my brother, my brother. And luckily someone actually took a photo. That's a photo from that moment. And that's like one of the highlights of my life. That was awesome. But the beauty at AFI is that I had to learn my craft. So I think I was 100% ambition beforehand. I did not know how much I didn't know until, did someone raise their hand? Or how about Lynn, we'll save your question for the end. Save your question and I'll make sure to get to you first. Thank you. I didn't know, how much I didn't know. And so I started to, at this point, learn. And I mean, just look at the photos, guys. Look at the difference in the camera equipment I'm shooting on now versus when I was on my little DSLR now. So that's another thing. AFI gave us all this camera equipment, and I learned this first picture. The tall man looking at the camera is Jonas. That's my cinematographer. He's a big part of my story. You'll see him later. But we met on these films. We started to learn. We started to teach. This was one of the happiest moments of my life. We just shot all these different things. We realized how much we didn't know. We realized how much we needed to, I realized how much I didn't know. I realized how much I needed to learn. And it was just, it was amazing. Sorry, I have a chat open. Are you guys seeing the chat box? No, right? Okay, good. Okay, so what is happening? Give me 1 second, guys. gonna stop my share for a second because it's acting up. Sorry about that, guys. So yes, I decided to learn and better the craft. I'm opening this again in 2 seconds. Okay, great. Someone give me a thumbs up. Can you see this now? Okay, great. So yes, I was learning the craft. So the next thing that happened was probably one of the biggest things in my life, and that was learning to trust my voice. So the thing about film school is that it's highly competitive. That doesn't mean that like I didn't meet some great friends. I met some phenomenal friends, some people that are the best to my day, but among classmates, among AFI other directors, there's 28 directors, only 28 directors per year. And there was only 2 Black directors. So I was one of 2 of the 28 of Black directors. There was a lot of competition in that program. And so even though I started to learn the craft, what started to happen was like we all had to pitch an idea for our thesis. And I decided to pitch an idea for Mass Ave. And that was about the relationship between me and my father, the differences, the cultural differences, all that stuff. And one of the big things that I believe, like my style of filmmaking is pretty much European and Asian influence. Like I'm aware that I don't have the most American sensibilities of story. I tend to straddle a line between classical structure and minimalist structure, but I also really believed in the stories I was trying to tell. So at the time when I was ready to make my thesis film, that was this personal story, very dialogue heavy. I was getting a lot of hate, to be honest. People saying it's not going to work. No one wants to see these 2 people talking all the time. It's basically mainly 2 characters, but I believed in it. I believed in it with every fiber of my being. And so I went out and I shot Mass Ave. And so this is with my DP, Jonas Fisher, like I said. So he was one of the top DPs in the program. And I don't have time to get into that, but I had a little imposter syndrome when I first got there because I was one of the greener filmmakers there. And he was one of the best cinematographers there. But he walked up to me on day 1 and was like, I want to make your movie. And I literally told him, shut up. I was like, you must be working with someone else. And he was like, no, I want to make your movie. And so we made our boot camp film together, our cycle 1 together, our short film together, and we just shot our thesis together. That's targeted at 2023 festival release. So that's Jonas. This is us on the set of Mass Ave. And just different moments. So this is an actor, Omete Nasi. He is he was applying to Juilliard on the set of my film. And he actually got into Juilliard. So now he attends Juilliard. This is before he got in. But we just shot this story that's about Africans. That's about the difference between cultures. That's a very personal story to me. And it was amazing. And so it was hard because what I mean is like we were going through all this times, like I said, of people saying it's not going to work. No one wants to see this film. It's too slow, all these things. But we really, really, really believed in the film and we made it with all the passion and love and energy and everything that I learned. So that's why that step of learning the craft was so important, because I could not have made this film before. And this is also the most professional film I made, because before that, like I said, I made sure you guys can't find the other films I made before, but this was the most professional film that I ever made. And I'm happy to report it paid off. Like this was us at the HBO event. This was with the 2 actors who played my dad and my son, and trusting my voice and believing my story and believing what I wanted to tell led to a lot of fantastic things. So of course we were a finalist for the HBO Short Film Award. We sold the film to HBO. It was a finalist, or they won the grand prize at the Directors Guild of America Student Film Award, which is great because Carl Weathers gave me my award there. And then also the feature screenplay got me signed to a top management company in Hollywood at Zero Gravity. And it meant a lot, from making that DSLR videos in Virginia to now actually being out here and making a film and seeing the trust in my voice be rewarded. So it was one of the most fantastic times of my life. This, and it happened in the pandemic. So outside of the pandemic, I was doing a lot of virtual stuff, but man, it was amazing. And then the funniest thing happened. All this stuff happened. My film was one of the most decorated films in my class, and nothing happened. And what I mean by that is I did what they call, like the water bottle tour. Like I had a bunch of meetings with people and things were great. My manager setting me up for things. I'm going to Viola Davis's company. I'm going to all these, I'm pitching all these different places. I'm like, it's fantastic. Life is great. Like I'm a filmmaker. It's going to be great. And I actually was living off of, I had some money saved up and then also some loans from AFI. So I was living off that money while my film was doing the circuit, while I was pitching. And I thought I was big time. Like I thought I was Hollywood. I was like, one of these days, one of these things is going to hit and it's going to be fantastic. And as I'm doing that, my bank account is getting lower and lower and lower. And I'm like, what's happening? I thought this was supposed to be the dream. And this is where another key takeaway is making a plan. And the reason I say that is I had a mentor named Rob Sparrow, who, he's one of the most important people in my life. And he said that the biggest thing is that he said 2 of the 28 filmmakers every year actually end up having a career. And that's because this industry is insanely competitive. It's insanely, circumstantial. It's insanely transactional. And he was like, so what you need to do is create a plan to keep yourself creatively motivated, to keep yourself creatively building so that no matter what happens, you can keep moving forward. And so this is one of the lowest points of my life because I had thought that everything was going great. And then, the things weren't happening to get my life, the next step. And so a part of my plan that I had written in film school was to shoot my short and then to shoot a feature. And that's like a debut feature in the same way that, Damien Chazelle had a film before Whiplash called Guy Madeline on a Park Bench. Barry Jenkins had a film before Moonlight called Medicine for Melancholy. So I wanted to shoot a film that I could then use as a launching pad to some of my bigger projects. And so even with all the hardness in terms of what was going on, I decided I had to rally myself, move on, and try to be a filmmaker. Like that's all I wanted to do was like be a filmmaker. And so I decided to make my own feature. And so this was one of the craziest things too, because I did this completely independently with a producer from William & Mary named Leo Blumberg Wall, who had DM'd me. And so we raised the money and we shot this film for under $200,000. So we found private investors, we pitched everyone for it. We did it completely ourselves because we didn't want to wait for the industry to give me permission to make my feature. Like it's one thing, like the industry already told me like your short is good, but wait, like I even had a meeting where someone told me they actually loved my film and they loved the script, but they thought I was early in my career. So they were like, they wanted to catch me. She told me, her boss said they wanted to catch me on my second movie instead of my first movie. They wanted to catch me after I got a little more clout. That's another thing that the industry does, which is really annoying. And so I went out and shot this thing myself. And it was definitely one of the most stressful things I've done. We barely made it, but we did it. We made it. It's the same story in terms of like it's my filmmaking style. It's about Africans. It's about the first generation experience. It's about those things. And so this film is I'm currently doing post-production on it now. So we finished editing, we finished final color. I'm doing final sound now and submitting the work in progress to festivals. So now we got to wait and see what happens. And that brings me to my last point, which is be resilient. And I think this be resilient really could apply to everything I've said so far, but I think it even applies now because like I said, I won the DGA, I'm on HBO, life is good, right? No, it's not. Like you got to keep working at it. And then I made my film and we applied to Sundance. And I really thought we had a good chance to get into Sundance. We did not get into Sundance, as you can, maybe you saw, because I wasn't at Sundance this year. And they wrote me a very nice letter and told me they really liked the film, believed in the film, they just couldn't find a place for it. But I had put so many eggs in that basket, like I was thinking that's going to like be the kickoff, that I have to be resilient. And I'm saying this to you guys, and I'm also saying it to myself because you have to remind yourself, like, I think one thing if I could go back in time is to tell myself that even with all the ambition, even with all the passion, it's not going to be easy, right? You still have to work hard. You still have to dig deep and find a way to keep going. And I think that's the most important. I think all the filmmakers I know who are doing things now, like a friend of mine, it's not announced yet, but he's going to be directing a movie with Issa Rae very soon, and he has been trying to make movies for 13 years, longer than me. He's older than me. He's been trying to make movies for 13 years. And you just keep going, keep cracking and wait to keep hustling, keep adapting, keep waiting for the breakthrough to happen. And it will happen. I believe it will happen. I mean, it's already started happening for me. My life is completely different now than it was then. But I think those are the key takeaways that I wanted to share on this journey. And so the first one is, of course, don't be afraid to make that leap. And it's very scary. Like, it's not like I don't say this as like, oh, it's easy, just quit your job, just whatever. But I find that a lot of people who have one foot in something else and one foot here, it can take longer to get there. But if you really want to do this, if you really believe in filmmaking, I believe that you have to be all in, that you have to find every facet of your being, every facet of your time to point it towards filmmaking. So you have to make the leap. The second is be the thing. And what I mean by that is, don't wait for people to tell you you're a director. You get that camera, you find your friends, you find your brothers, you find whatever, you shoot that film, because the only way you're going to become a director is by being a director. Like, it's the only way. Like, it's not really a thing you work up to, right? Some other departments you can work up to, but if you want to be a director, if you want to be a writer, you have to do the thing. You have to write screenplays. You have to direct films, no matter how small the budget. Don't be afraid to adapt. And so I didn't want to go to film school. I had no interest in going to film school. I thought film school was the worst. I wanted to do my own thing. And it's the best thing that happened to me. Learn your craft. I literally thought I was sweet. I thought my stuff was really, really nice. And you can always get better. In fact, filmmaking is a lifelong journey of honing your artistic voice, figuring out what tools you can use to tell a story. And although it's very hard, because I made a film that I thought was amazing, and then my professors were like, this is terrible, you have to learn the craft. There's so many things you can learn. Be a student of the craft and don't have a problem with that. Trust your voice. So that one I talked about, like when people are saying it's not going to work, the story isn't going to work, what makes you unique and what will make you stand out as a filmmaker is your voice. So yes, learn the tools of the craft, look at other films to learn how to make it, but still make it your style, still make it your thing, still make it uniquely you, and trust that. Then make a plan, like I said. So really just keep believing, keep believing. And what helps with believing is when you have things that you're working towards. So this year I was supposed to shoot another short. Then this year I need to write another script. This year I need to do another short. This year I need to do another script. I had a 5-year plan. I'm on year 2, going into year 3 of my 5-year plan. And I'm actually a little bit ahead of schedule because I was supposed to shoot my feature a little bit later. I'm actually a little bit ahead of schedule, but just because I had that plan. And lastly, if I could triple underline this, I would. It's be resilient. That's at every step of the journey, because you're going to make some films that don't work. You're going to apply to some festivals you don't get into. Some things aren't going to go your way, but just be resilient, believe in yourself, and keep going, and you'll get there. And I can say that because so many people I know, any filmmaker I know who's working can tell you this. Like, they went through these steps. I'm going through these steps as we speak. So I just think that's really, really important. So yeah, that's the quick overview. I could keep going into detail on any of those things, but I want to try to make sure it's as useful for you guys as possible, so we can open up and talk about some questions and speak more about it. But yeah, thank you for listening. And if you're an aspiring filmmaker or really anything in life, just keep at it, keep going, and don't take no for an answer. And you'll get to where you need to go. Okay, great. So let's open up to some questions.
Omar, I believe we have a first question in the chat.
Okay, great. Let me see it. Okay, so Hannah asks, what do you think is the best way to create a show reel or a portfolio? I think one, it depends on what is Hannah, is that for directing? Like are you looking to become a director, or for what?
Both directing and cinematography.
Oh, okay, great. I mean, as simple as it sounds, it is kind of the other thing of just going to shoot stuff. So finding people to go and shoot stuff. And I would say, of course, if you're doing it at a low budget, to shoot it in a unique way, right? So like, if you're just going to shoot, the problem with show reels, I think sometimes is a lot of times they can look the same. So like, every person who has a decent camera and a decent thing has a show reel that looks very, very similar. So you want to make sure that no matter what you're doing, you're using your specific lens, your specific eye, make it as unique as possible. And that doesn't mean make it like, weird. Like some people are like, would take that and go, let me just try to make it weird for weird's sake. No, I truly mean doing the work to sit with yourself and think about, what is my lens? What is my worldview? What is my unique way of seeing the world? And making sure that when you put that in the reel, that is the most important thing for you. The other thing is, I would say though, is you can have like Mass Ave, my short, actually has become my reel. So I actually don't even have a director's reel, because if anyone's like, oh, what do you do? oh, do you have HBO? Do you want to go see my short? Oh, let me see your private link. Do you want to see my short? That's become my calling card of how I make films. So as a cinematographer, as a director, you can do the showreel route. I don't love the showreel personally. I believe in having like a thing that works. So if you can make a short film, whether it's 6 minutes, 7 minutes, if you can do something like that to show off my cinematography, my directing, that would be my advice of what's the most impactful. But then if you are going to do a reel and put up online, to get more work, just make sure it's your unique voice and your unique lens.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so BJ asked, what qualifications do you think help your acceptance into AFI? I think 100% the honesty, like I was saying. So I applied, and I can tell you because we had this thing called Reel Day where you have to show all your films on the first day. I didn't realize how grainy and low budget my stuff was until they put it on a big screen in the theater in front of everybody. It was low budget. And so I say that because I don't think necessarily it was like, oh, he's this amazing filmmaker, but I think that I had a very unique voice in that film. In fact, I'm still proud of that film. That film, again, I would probably show people. It's really low budget, but like, if you look at that and then the stuff I'm making now, you can see the way I see the world and the way I make films in that. I just have gotten way better and have better collaborators at it. So I think the key is telling the truth. So even if you're doing a low budget thing, do your thing. Like if you make it with your brother and your cousin and you know what, do your thing. Make it your voice, your style. And as long as it's in there, it's you, somebody will see it. The second part is just being completely honest. Like I didn't try to do any like, oh, I'm very qualified and I should be here. No, I told the truth. I'm incredibly ambitious. I want to come to film school. I want to see my name in the Hollywood lights. Like I want to do all that stuff, but I'm not there yet. And I'm scared that you're not going to think I'm there yet. So I think that when it comes to filmmaking in general, like just be yourself. Like, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's actually like the most important thing. Like be you, and that's what's going to get you where you want to go in applications, in your filmmaking, all that kind of stuff. Danny says, what do you think is the best way to find a mentor that can help push you along your journey? I mean, mentors come all different kinds of ways. My mentors all came through AFI. So really through my film school is where I met either people coming, like, I met Barry Jenkins at AFI, which is great. I don't have a picture of that, but I would put that in. That was the highlight of my life. Like I dapped up Barry Jenkins. It was awesome. But you meet people and, sometimes things are natural. So like some people I've met and we had a natural relationship. We keep talking. Some people we met, we don't. But really it's my mentors at AFI that I met through class who saw me and saw what I was trying to do and poured into me that have been really helpful. But another thing that works surprisingly, and this is going to sound crazy, cold emailing and cold calling work. So you can, if you see someone, you can send them an email. Now, if they're too if you say, I don't even know if you'll be able to find Barry Jenkins' email, but if you send Barry Jenkins an email, he's not going to reply. So I think Daniel Kaluuya said this thing where he said, look for people who are in your class. He was like, if you look like in high school, if you try to talk to people who are class above you, they don't want to talk to you. You want to look for people who are in your class. So you want to look for people who are like, emerging filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers. Tarantino's not going to reply to you, Spielberg's not going to reply to you, but you can find people's contacts online and send them an email. This is who I am, and people will reply. I've gotten some mentors and some help actually from that as well. The only thing is you got to be okay with rejection. Most of them aren't going to reply, but you'll get someone reply, hey, I have time. I really was moved by what you said. Thank you for watching my films. Let's talk. So I think that's definitely a thing. How do you deal with negative criticism of your movies? As you navigate the industry, how do you differentiate between flattery and genuine interest? Lauren, that's a fantastic question. I think the first way I deal with criticism for my movies is that thing I was talking about, narrative workshop at AFI, where you sit in front of the entire class and they tell you how bad your film is. It's nothing worse can happen to me than that. Like you would just sit there, and so another thing is you can't talk. So you sit there, you can't talk. They changed this now, but in my year, everyone had red cards and green cards. So like the first question would be, who would recommend this movie? And then like some people put up red, people put up their green. And on my cycle 2, I got like a sea of red. It was one of the worst. Like, who would recommend this movie? Everyone's like, nope. So that was really, really hard. But to be fair, I knew that my film wasn't working, at that time. So I think how I deal with negative criticism is, one, you have to have a very tough skin. So I learned that and honed that at AFI with things just roll off my shoulders, to be honest. And the other thing too is art is subjective. So like there could be things that work in your film, but not everyone has to love your film. There's films that people love that I'm like, I don't see what the big whoop is. Like, between you and I don't love the second Black Panther. Like, and I love the first one, but the second one I was like, and everyone loved it. So like, it's subjective, is what I'm saying. You can. Not everyone will like your stuff, but I think for me, it was looking at the types of films that I wanted to make, looking at other filmmakers, learning what they were doing with their craft, and then being able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish with the tools of the craft that worked for my film. And so basically how I really got the best shell is I'm like, you can tell me you don't like the film for taste, but you can't tell me you don't like it for craft, right? That was my idea. If I can make sure it's crafted with the filmmaking principles to the best way, even if you don't like it, now I don't have to take it personally because you just don't like that style of film. But at least I know that the film isn't a disaster. Whereas what happened before is like my craft was so bad that like, it's not even about taste. It's like, I can't even watch it. There's nothing to watch. So I think believing in myself, believing in the films that I make has really helped me deal with the negative criticism. And with the flattery and genuine interest, I think that's something you deal with every day. Because I've had some meetings where people are like, you're the most amazing filmmaker. Somebody told me I was the African, they're like, I believe you're the African Ryan Coogler. And then I never heard from them again. So like things like things happen and it's fine. So like that tough skin is really, really important. What strategies did you employ to finance your most recent film? So for the feature, the biggest strategy I employed was delegation. And what I mean by that is finding someone who is good at the thing that you're not good at. So I can fundraise. I'm okay at fundraising, but I don't necessarily have the connections to people with the deepest pockets. So when Leo, my producer, came on board, he had much more connections with people who knew what they were doing, like, in terms of like, and had more money. And so I kind of told Leo when he came on, that's your thing. You're going to be the one who helps me find the money. I'm going to be the one who, if any meeting you got, set up the pitch, I'll come in, I'll pitch. Like, that's what we're going to do. And so I literally, he set up the meetings. We met with a bunch of people and then I pitched to them. The thing that was really important there though, was I had a deck. So I literally made a deck that has like, this is the style of filmmaking. This is why you should invest. This is how we intend for people to make money back. And I had learned how to do that through my internships. I interned at AFI. And so they gave me all the decks of like real filmmakers. And so I just modeled my own after theirs. So I had that deck to really explain the clear plan of this is the film I'm making, this is how we're gonna make it, and this is where we're trying to go. Had some stills from other movies. You can use Shot Deck or Film Grab to get stills from other movies and put that in the deck. So like you can find movies that are similar to your movie. Like I think I used a lot of, for my feature, Last Black Man in San Francisco, Medicine for Melancholy. Like I use those stills to show how I'm gonna do this brother relationship. And then any tips to get the most out of a small budget? Oh yeah, and sales is a part of this, right? There are some people who I've heard are like, they're like not that great as a filmmaker, but they're phenomenal at selling it. So you have to find a way to use your voice to get into a room, tell these people, this is why you should invest. It's going to be amazing. This is going to be like, and you can feel it. Like I've been in some rooms that people are like this, you're right. This is going to be amazing. Like I need to give you $20,000 right now. I'm like, yes, please. Thank you. So you want to start trying to learn how to get people involved, and everyone has their own way. So like, you don't have to do it like, I'm high energy. Like if you're a lower energy, whatever, you can do it your way, but just find a way to get people excited about your projects. And then any tips to get the most out of a small budget? For me, I think it's about setting yourself up for success. So I have a couple friends I know who are like, okay, we only have $30,000 to make this movie. I'm gonna make a sci-fi space Western. You just don't have the funds to make a sci-fi space Western. So you can now try to spend all your time making the sci-fi space Western, but usually what happens is it shows up on screen that you didn't have enough money for a sci-fi space Western. So if you're making something low budget, you want to figure out a way to use minimal locations, minimal actors, minimal special effects, minimal VFX to still tell a very interesting, compelling story. So you can still do horror. I mean, horror is probably the easiest thing to do low budget, like look at Paranormal Activity, all these things. Like you can still find a way to do your thing, but I think design the film in a way that it can survive that low budget. Like I designed my African Giants, my feature, we shot for 200, well, it's 183, but we shot for like 183,000. it's designed to be two brothers spending a weekend in their apartment and going around LA, which is stuff. So it's mostly shot in one location, and then other stuff that, like, you know, we did outside that didn't cost that much money. So, you know, design it in a way that you can set yourself up for success. I think that's great. Yes. So is it Jarius?
Jarius, yes.
Jarius, go ahead.
I just had a question, like, what advice would you give for someone primarily seeking to do screenwriting? Would you say we have to also kind of learn how to direct and filmmake as well?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think that people who, like, you can do it, like there's a lot of people, I mean, I write and direct. So like, there's a lot of people who write and direct, but like, I just find that you should spend your time honing the craft that you want to do, because it's hard enough to get into the industry as that thing, right? So you want to make sure that if you're a screenwriter first, that your screenplays is the best thing. That's my calling card. It takes a whole nother journey to then learn to become a director, and it's like a different mindset. So there's certain things about story that is unique to that, but it's a different mindset for me. So I would say focus on your screenwriting if that's what you want to do, right? If you have aspirations for direct, yeah, you can learn that as well. But if you want to screenwrite, I would say focus on your screenwriting, bettering your craft, and that means taking notes. So what I mean by that is, you can't write your screenplay in your room and go, this is Citizen Kane. This is the most amazing screenplay of all time. And no one's going to read it. No one's going to give me notes because I know it's amazing. You want to start to give it to people, and people will give you notes. Some you agree with, some you don't. But I just find that the people who get further along too are people who actually get a reaction, and people who tell you the truth. Like, hey man, I know what you're trying to do. I don't think it's really working. So keep working at it, and you'll hone it. And the other thing I'll recommend is a platform called Coverfly. And you can submit scripts on this platform, and you'll get feedback there. So like, I started submitting scripts, and my script mass app was like top 1%. And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, this script is good. Out of the thousands of scripts on this platform, it's getting top 1%. So you can start applying to competitions and feedback. Some don't, but some of them cost money. Well, they all cost. Festivals can also help you find management as well. So yeah, I would say if you want to be a writer, focus on writing, because that's a hard enough craft. But you know, if you want to do both, I'm not deterred. I write and direct, so I'm not deterring you from that either. If I want to get into the post-production aspect of film, how do you recommend following that path without much interest in making my own works? I wouldn't be opposed to it because it's not my focus, and it seems to be sort of separate entities, the process of working towards making your own films. Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing for you would be to find a network of filmmakers. Like I said, let's say you want to be an editor, or I don't know if it's VFX, sound, whatever. So you have to find a network of filmmakers who need what you do so that you can find them. So film school is a way to do that. But there's also things like Ava DuVernay has a thing called Array database. It's like you can put yourself in there, and so people can look in the database and find you for jobs. I mean, but you also got to learn how to do those things. Like you got to learn to do VFX, learn to do, all that stuff. But you just have to find filmmakers. And another thing I recommend, like if you don't want to go to film school, you can find outreach to film schools and be like, hey, I'm an editor and I'm looking for projects. Let people know, because like a lot of composers did that. And so like my school would send out, like, this composer wrote this email and wants to do this, and they would send it out, and then people could reach out if they wanted to. So I would say try to find that network so you can work on other people's projects. But yes, you do not, like if you want to be an editor, there's no need for you to have to go and make your own film. Like hone the craft, see if you can find people. And then if you can't, then that's when you maybe just go shoot something with your phone and edit it together so you can work on your storytelling skills. Without film school, do you think becoming a PA is a good starting point? Do you know if many PA jobs require experience? They do not. Most PA jobs I find are connection based, which is tricky if you don't have any connections. So that's why I got lucky that I I was in Sprint and that lady came in and I got there. So most jobs are there. I think PAing is great if you want to get on a film set. Like if you just want to get on a film set and learn, especially also if you don't know what you want to do yet. I think the great thing about PAing is you're on the set. And I remember I used to go sit by the monitor and just watch the directors. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. In fact, it was on that when I realized, I started asking people like, hey, how long have you been a PA? How long have you been whatever? And I realized that everyone was doing their thing for a long time. And that's when that's another thing that made me go back to film school, where I was like, if I want to be a director, I can't PA and become a director. Like I said, the only way to become a director is by making things, by directing things. So I think it's a good starting point to get your foot in the door, to learn about the filmmaking, to be on a great set. But I don't think it's gonna like I don't think you're going to make a career out of PAing. I think it's great to start, and then you can figure out where you want to pivot. What I look for when casting actors, you know, this is a great question, Laura. I look for that. It's weird to say, but I look for that thing, and I just, you know, it's kind of a gut thing. When I'm looking for actors, I try to find this quality about them that is memorable, that makes me want to look at them, that makes me fantastic, really interested in them. Both my actors in my feature are going to Juilliard now, which was not on purpose. Like when I cast the older brother, I didn't know he was going to Juilliard. Turns out he just got into Juilliard and actually got assigned to be the little brother of my other actor. Like, but we didn't know this at the time. And so now they're both in New York at Juilliard, and I miss them dearly. But they both had this thing. And I told the older brother, when I watched his tape, I started crying because, you know, they'll send the tape. I started crying, and I was like, he's from Uganda. And I was like, you're like the Ugandan Marlon Brando. Like he had this thing, like, and it's weird. Like it's kind of a gut thing. So he had this thing. So it's like, I think it's about knowing your characters, knowing what's authentic about them, and then trusting your gut. Can this person be that character? Another thing is, it's easier too if you cast a character who is, if an actor who is close to that lived experience. So both my actors were first generation Americans. Their parents are African. So that lived experience really, 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 really helped. So yeah. Let's see, maybe one more. Okay, yeah, one more. I know you had mentioned having imposter syndrome when you first made it to AFI. How did you overcome that feeling that you might not be a good filmmaker? Oh my God, this is a great question, and maybe even better to end on. So when I got into AFI, I was telling you guys there's this thing called Reel Day. On Reel Day, we played all the films, and that's when I said they played my film, which is very grainy. And the guy before me, he's a DP named Moritz. Guys, he shot a Porsche commercial and like a Budweiser commercial, all high budget, and he went right before me, and you see these beautiful landscapes, these beautiful tableaus, and I went next, and it was embarrassing, it was awful, and I knew then, I was like, okay, I'm definitely one of the greener people here. So I went home, and I started sobbing, like I was like crying, I was like, I'm a disaster, like I shouldn't be here. So I literally set a meeting with admissions. So the next day I went to the director of admissions and I walked into the office and I said, hey, why did you guys let me in? I feel like I'm a little early, I feel like it's a little green. Maybe I need to go back, get a little better and come back. And she started laughing at me and she said, Omar, the discipline head was adamant that you were supposed to be here. He fought tooth and nail that you be in this program. He saw something in you and he was adamant that you were supposed to be here. So I went home and I'm really still emotional. And I called my dad, and my dad, you know, he has that tough love. So I called my dad and he can hear me crying. He's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm too green. And he's like, if you want, I'll buy a ticket right now. You can come back right now. But I don't think you're going to do that. And he goes, do you know the story of Hakeem Olajuwon? Hakeem Olajuwon's a Hall of Fame NBA player, but he was born and raised in Africa. I forget which country in Africa. And NBA scouts did a program called NBA Africa, and they saw him. And they were like, this kid's really, really good. So they brought him to the US, but when he got here, he had no fundamentals. So he didn't know how to dribble. He didn't know how to set a screen. He didn't know how to play basketball. And people used to laugh at him and be like, this guy's not that good. But my dad said, do you think those scouts are dumb? They knew there was something in him. There was something about him. And Hakeem got here and he started working. Hakeem Olajuwon's a two-time NBA champion and one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And so my dad said, maybe you're Hakeem Olajuwon. They see something in you. You don't have the skills yet, but you have to learn and work, and maybe you'll be better than everyone else in your class. And that one's a full circle moment, because the guy who told me he didn't even want me to be a filmmaker, he wouldn't talk to me again, is now the one giving me advice like, big ups, you got to keep going. So that was huge for me. And that's kind of how I got over it, because I realized, okay, I may be the greenest now, but by the time I leave here, I need to do everything in my power to be the best filmmaker I can be. And I did that. And you know, the true story is, my film did more than the people who were way ahead of me in class. And that shows you, because we're all on an equal playing field once you get to film school. They gave us all the same budgets. We're all on an equal playing field. And so you believe in yourself, you work on your craft, and you can make things happen. So that's how I got over my imposter syndrome, because it helped for my family and friends. And then my film started getting way, way better. So that helped too, because I was like, okay, I'm not a disaster.